Thank you, Michael. It is a real pleasure to get to visit with you.
Ambassador Hackeby, yesterday President Trump said Israel has agreed to terms for a 60-day Gaza ceasefire and calls on Hamas to agree to the deal. And speaking with the president and vice president, could you tell how close are we?
Well, we hope we're very close. We felt for many months now that we've been close, but Hamas is always the one that gums it up just when we think we're on the brink of getting all of the hostages back. So I'm hopeful that we're going to see a breakthrough. As you know, the Prime Minister is going to be in Washington next week. I'll be there as well, visiting with the President, the Vice President, the Prime Minister. It is going to be a working session, and obviously the number one thing on the agenda is getting all of the hostages released.
And in your opinion, is this the best agreement that can be achieved at this moment?
I think we're still waiting to get the final terms to see what Hamas is willing to agree to. But anything that gets all the hostages returned is a positive step. The president's been very clear that Hamas has to understand that it doesn't have a future or a role in the upcoming iteration of what Gaza is going to look like.
So about that, can you help us understand what is the U.S. vision for the day after the war in Gaza? Is there any scenario where Hamas remains part of Gaza's future?
Well, the president's made it very clear that Hamas has no future in Gaza, and I think that's the right approach. And he's been very consistent, and he's been very firm about that. Anything else would be like saying that it was okay for the Nazis to stay in Germany and have a role in governing the future of Germany after World War II. I can't imagine anyone thinking that that was a sensible, reasonable approach. I can't imagine that any rational person would think that after the horrible, savage attacks on Israel, October the 7th, their massacre of so many innocent civilians, and then they're holding up hostages for over 600 days and torturing them, that somehow that people in that position who have done those things should be rewarded with the future.
I think the key question now is whether Netanyahu is willing to bring the Gaza war to an end. Do you think Netanyahu is prepared this time?
Well, he said all along, I mean, everyone wants it to end. The Prime Minister, certainly the Americans want it to end. President Trump has made that clear. Most of all the hostages' families want it to end. But ending it is not the hard part. The hard part is getting it ended so that Hamas is removed from their power and their strength and from their ability to hold hostages and to torture them.
Ambassador Hackeby, we've been in a similar position several times in the past. From what you understand, what led Netanyahu towards making a decision this time, knowing Ben Gvir and Smotrich are likely to challenge him?
I can't get into what maybe the internal politics of Israel would be. I just simply am not capable of speaking into that. It's not my role. I would say that I've not met an Israeli that wanted the war to continue. I've not met an Israeli that didn't want the hostages returned, whether they were in the government or out of the government or just some citizen on the street.
As an ambassador, what is your message today to Ben Gvir and Smotrich?
Well, I really don't have a message to them. My message to them is to do the job that your people elected you to do. Work toward a solution that brings all the hostages home and make sure that Hamas is not there anymore. That's the American message that the president has made clear. And as far as the internal politics of Israel, it's not appropriate for the U.S. to try to tell the Israelis what they should or should not do. But we also respect the sovereignty of the state of Israel. And quite frankly, they respect the sovereignty of the United States. It's one of the reasons the partnership works so very well.
Ambassador, what do you say to those in Israel who believe that the decision on a deal in Gaza and Iran is not Netanyahu's, but Trump's?
Oh, I think that's maybe not looking at it very, very honestly, because there has been a level of cooperation between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, the likes of which that most people will never fully understand or comprehend. It's been a necessary partnership, a necessary level of cooperation and candor that is part of this unique partnership that we have. I like to say to people, look, the United States, we have friends, we have allies, but we really only have one partner. And the partnership between Israel and the United States is quite unique, and the depth of it is extraordinary and unlike any we have anywhere else in the world.
Following what you just said, satellite images show the Iranians are digging at Fordo. Does Israel have a green light to act against any new activity?
I don't want to comment on that because those are decisions that are not public decisions. They haven't been made and haven't been disclosed, so those will be looked at. What I do feel I can say is that everyone has been clear. Not just the Israelis and the Americans, but even the Europeans have said Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. So that's the clear message that has been said to the world, and I think that the military action of both the Israelis and the Americans should have made that very, very clear, not just to the Iranians, but to everyone in the world.
Is a deal with Iran something that could happen soon?
It's up to the Iranians. President Trump, again, has been very clear, very consistent. He said that they can't have enrichment, they can't have the capacity to have a nuclear weapon. So when they come to that conclusion, then certainly something could happen that would be very historic. But those are the conditions.
Regarding President Trump's vision and the expansion of the Abraham Accords to countries like Syria, do you trust Al-Julani?
I think the question is, where do we go forward? And is this government one that is willing to move forward in a positive way toward a democratic approach, or to one that at least pushes aside terrorism, pushes aside activities that would be threatening to its neighbors? And I think we have a real opportunity here, not only in Syria, but in Lebanon and in the rest of the Middle East. The Abraham Accords were historic, but the ability to expand upon them and bring other countries into them in the relatively near future is truly something that I think will catch people maybe in a way that will leave them breathless.
Ambassador Hackabee, would you recommend that President Trump recognize the annexation of certain areas in the West Bank as part of a comprehensive agreement?
That's a decision that only the president can make, and I would not be one to get ahead of him. He has his own views, his own way of dealing with things. I've come to trust his instincts. They're almost always right, and I would never second guess him.
President Trump is calling to cancel Netanyahu's trial. Can you help me to understand what's behind those tweets and posts?
I think there's nothing other than his own understanding of what it is to be the object of lawfare. And President Trump, like no person that I've ever seen in the history of politics, has been the target of unbelievable attempts to try to beat him in the courtroom rather than at the ballot box. But simply saying that here's a person who is leading a country right in the middle of a war, and he knows what it's like to have all of these distractions. So I think it was a matter of expression of friendship, an expression of identity, of understanding what it's like to try to be the leader of a country in a crisis and having to be constantly distracted.
So this is simply an act of support and not at Netanyahu's request?
When you hear the president speak or read what he says, you don't have to scratch your head and wonder, what was he really trying to say? So I think the best thing to do is to always take the president at his word. He means what he says what he means. It's one of the things that I love most about him. He makes promises, then he keeps them.
Ambassador Hackabee, thank you so much for your time. Hoping for better days ahead.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be with you, and I appreciate your giving me the time today.